Happy Thanksgiving and welcome back to Down Home Dietitian. Since most of you probably carved a bird and you're gonna have some meat and bones left over, I thought today was a great day to talk about bone broth. It's gotten a lot of attention for its purported health benefits, and today we're gonna talk about the research behind it, the concerns, benefits, risks, and how you can make free stock at home with your Thanksgiving turkey or other bones you might have available. Bone broth has received a lot of attention in recent years as it's been promoted a lot by diets like the Paleolithic diet and some others, but it's been used for years and years and years, and even ancient civilizations used to break open bones and boil them to get out the marrow and the nutrition into broth that they drain. Research shows that bone broth can be a good source of different amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, including collagen. For this reason, some claim it has some great abilities to promote skin health and anti-aging. Unfortunately, eating collagen does not so directly relate to promoting collagen under the skin, so that's not a benefit that's really been proven with science or evidence. Bone broth does have some mild anti-inflammatory properties. These have been mostly demonstrated in mouse studies, so it's still a question mark how well that translates to humans. Now, there have been some concerns with a couple of studies about the lead content of bone broth because bones tend to sequester heavy metals, including lead. So when we're using the bones to create a bone broth, there might be an increased risk that we might be consuming more lead. One study in the UK found that even organic, pasture-raised, free-range chicken broth contained higher levels of lead than is generally accepted. Further studies in different animals in different environments have found acceptable levels of lead in bone broth. Anytime research tends to come out with confusing conclusions like that, it usually means that there's something about the subject that we don't quite understand. There's so many factors involved in the sourcing of lead, the lead content of the soil that the animal was raised on, the feed that they're on, and a variety of other different processes. One way that people will sometimes make bone broth is by adding vinegar to the bones and the water while they're boiling it to help to break down the bones to release more minerals into the broth and make it more nutritious. A result of that, though, while it increases maybe levels of desirable minerals like calcium and magnesium, it can also release more of the lead in the bone. Since lead and other heavy metals that might be sequestered in bone are neurotoxins that gradually build up with a cumulative effect over time, generally my approach is that I would avoid any sort of diet that promotes taking bone broth as a regular sort of supplement that you take daily, because if there is high levels of lead in your bone broth, that can build up over time. But making bone broth that you use in your cooking, but not taking daily or multiple times a day as a supplement, particularly if you're not using vinegar to break down the bones, is a better way to avoid higher levels of lead contamination in your bone broth. So here we have the bones that are left after a turkey dinner, and we have several others. I'm going to make a few batches of stock with this, but got some leg bones. This is a good chunk of the torso. I do make a pretty good effort to pick it clean, but I don't stress about getting all these little bits. You can see there's still some little bits of meat on here. Leaving some of these on here is going to increase the protein content of your broth, so I don't worry about that too much. To make my broth, I will either use a slow cooker, an Instant Pot, or my stock pot with a strainer insert. I like the ease of this because I can put my bones and my vegetables and herbs and everything in here, simmer it for a long time, and whenever it's done, I'll just pull this out. The pressure cookers or slow cookers have the benefit of needing less babysitting. You still have to watch them to make sure that the water doesn't boil too low, but a pot on the stove is going to need a little more monitoring that way. So you can pick the method that works best for you. So to the pot, I'm going to add these turkey bones. some vegetable scraps. I keep a Ziploc gallon bag in my freezer. Anytime I have some onion skins or green bean ends or celery tops or anything like that that I have left over from another recipe, I put them in here. And adding them to your bone broth is going to add flavor and nutrition, because as it all simmers together, some of the vitamins and minerals of these vegetable scraps will leach into the broth itself, and you'll get those too. And there's no magical recipe here. I will sometimes add herbs. If I have some, like, I'm going to toss in a couple of bay leaves. Maybe I'll add a little bit of rosemary. That sounds good. But don't be afraid to experiment with it, and don't be afraid you're going to do it wrong. Bone broth is really, really simple, and it's very hard to mess up. So next I'm going to add water to just below the top of my pot, and add a lid and simmer this for as long as I can. Sometimes I'll do as little as an hour or two. Sometimes I'll make it up to 6 to 8 hours. But you don't, especially with the pot on the stove, you don't want to leave it boiling while you're not around in case it boils too low, because you do need to add water to it occasionally. You can do this without babysitting it, as I mentioned before, in a pressure cooker or in a slow cooker. You would put it in like an Instant Pot pressure cooker on high pressure for 20 or 30 minutes to make your bone broth, and then strain it. You can leave it in a slow cooker for overnight, 12 hours, however long. The longer you go, the more flavor you're gonna get. You're also gonna be extracting more of those metals and minerals out of those bones, as we mentioned earlier, so just be aware of that. So I'm just starting my broth here on high heat until it starts to boil, and then I'll turn it down to probably medium to let it simmer for hopefully a few hours so I can make some turkey soup for dinner tonight. And that's it. Boil your bone broth for as long as you like to get the best flavor out of it, and you can use it just like you would store-bought stock, keeping in mind that this is unsalted until you add salt. So the broth that you buy at the store usually has salt already added. So if you're using a recipe that calls for store-bought broth, you will probably find you need to add a little bit of salt to get the flavor you're looking for. But the good news is making your broth at home gives you more control over the amount of salt that's added, and generally you'll find you end up taking in less sodium when you make it at home as well. So that's an extra benefit too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped you understand a little bit about what's true and what isn't about bone broth, and to learn how you can make some nutritious stock at home. Please click the like button if you liked it, click subscribe if you want to see more, and don't forget, healthy doesn't have to be hard.